Primarily, I try to focus on LinkedIn for those kind of keeping up to date. Yeah. So, for example, there's a fantastic guy from Dutch public service called Zachrison, and he has got this weekly newsletter. And if I don't have the time to consume other stuff, I always try to read through that. Then, of course, I'm both reading and writing reports. And to try to step back a little bit and to like really have a big overview of what's happening within AI and audio or TV in media specifically. So yeah, I try to consume a lot, but I also try to not devote too much time to that, but rather focus on what we should do at my company, Swedish Radio.
But is it to a point then that you are pinpointing individuals that has a niche, has a profile that fits with your, and then you follow them if they're on LinkedIn, or if they're on Medium or whatever. So
definitely.
So the bottom line, the way to filter is to find individuals that is, okay, these gives me constantly good news or interesting news.
I think it was the same in the glorious age of Twitter, you know, when it was useful. Yeah. I mean, you kind of followed
another topic.
Followed Twitter, people, you know, that had a good feed basically, and you could connect with them, and you could get answers from like British and American journalists that wouldn't speak to you even if you were in the same room, maybe traditionally.
But here was an open space. But it boils down to who do you trust and whose point of views are you interested in, and then you need to filter hard towards that.
But in my view, you know, for one, you want to have like real-time news and being the one that actually are posting things quickly to have other people following you. But that's not my, at least, angle. My angle is actually to try to have second-day news and even later, perhaps weekly summaries in some way, and have other people at least try to summarize it for me so I don't have to.
That's another strategy. Do you want to be on the very, very first entry point, or do you want to have someone who's done some thinking and reflection and summarizing?
What about you? Do you want to be? Is it important for you to have like hourly?
No.
Minute?
When I was the most stressed as the head of news at the Swedish broadcasting Ekot, then I felt a stress to kind of copy paste the push notifications from TT, our national news agency, and get them out really, really quickly. Sometimes before our own news brand. Now I don't do that at all. I kind of let other clever or eager people do that job for me and take a little bit of a step back. And also I reason like this. If it's something really important happening, like with OpenAI this week or new news coming out about that, I will hear about it anyway. You know, somehow you would mention it to me, or I see it on some other platform, or even on TV or whatever.
But this week actually was very different for me, at least. Normally, I don't care what happened hour to hour.
But this week was
hard because I had other colleagues and others that said, do you hear about this and this? And I thought, no, because it wasn't available yesterday, but it's happening so fast now. So this week was very special, I think. In that respect.
But okay. Will this intensify more and more? Is this showing like how innovation pressure or innovation speed accelerating? So this is the new normal, or is this more of a hype phenomenon that will pass also for AI, or is this the where we are and it's going to get more?
The weird thing about the news cycle now, and I mean it's always like. The news cycle tends to focus on a couple of topics, and so the news cycle with the invasion of Ukraine and with the war Israel-Gaza, it's so intense all the time, and then other stuff, gang violence in Sweden, or like the bad economy or whatever. So we have a lot of, and then I've thought about this, that the AI progress, it's maybe the only kind of positive news that we have had in this cycle. It's thrilling to people, and people love also the news that is a bit more constructive and forward-looking, and these kind of big visions, or dystopic scenarios or whatever it might be can be very engaging, because people can suffer from news fatigue against the normal news if you see what I mean. So I don't know now if the OpenAI story has kind of converged into a normal news story, that in the sense that it's kind of not altruistic, not the kind of big positive visions, not that this is the cure for all the problems of humanity, but now it's normal corporate drama that we're entering
On a
in.
high level,
and the journalists know how to handle that.
Yeah, they know how to handle that, and it's great engagement on that, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. And just to keep up or remind myself, what kind of sources did you use? You said LinkedIn was a big one.
And then I go to trusted news websites, of course. Yeah. So, I mean...
Like what?
I use... I'm over-consuming BBC News, both on linear radio and on online, and I mean... also some video from them, but some really great podcasts that they have in the digital area. So that is one thing, and then I don't go to so many American websites. I have a subscription of New York Times Audio, because I really want to keep up with the innovation there also. And then, of course, listen to some great summaries and podcasts and stuff that they have. And then we have a group of commissioners at Swedish Radio, and we share a lot of links. Okay. And also an AI council where we share a lot of the AI stuff. So then I go into those kind of recommended links.
I'm gonna... there's a couple of flips on this. So when I engage on LinkedIn, I have taken upon me within my community or network, or call it whatever you want, friends, customers, or people who sort of know who I am. When I read a good article, I do it quite often that actually this article is interesting exactly for this person.
Yeah.
So I have an example of, we had Maria Stockhaus here as an example. She's in the Swedish Parliament. She's working for the moderate. She's into the politics around forming the regulation and all that. And of course, when I find really interesting reads on how they done it in Norway or in UK, I make it a point to think about my friends in my community and then ping, like put a comment. I don't say anything. I use in the comment, put one name in, because I think, okay, this link is actually useful for her.
It's very good customer relations.
I think it is.
Or networking, you know?
I mean, but I do it out of passion. Of course, I do it from a way to market or whatever, but I actually don't care. I more do it because I read something and I read it and I immediately get a sense. This is... Yeah. Is that good or is that bad, or is that helping, or is it just spreading more?
I think it reminds me of what my dad used to do, and he still does it. Like when he saw an interesting clip in the newspaper, he kind of cut it out and posted it in a normal letter to me. Yeah. It's like, hey, this is a really interesting piece, or he would send me a book or something like that. Now he's not doing that so much, but maybe giving a link or referring to a newspaper article. So I think what you do is...
Because I vetted
it's really good.
I vetted the article in some ways.
Yes.
Not vetted is the wrong word, but I liked it, and I think this is useful for you.
Do you do that?
No, not that much. I am more a collector than a sharer, I think, but I probably should. But I try to keep my time management.
But it has also to do with your role and your job, and compared to my role and my job. So I think it makes sense.
I think keeping up with news is really hard, and especially AI news that is like exploding all the time. But I think with that, we are super excited to have especially you here, Olle Zachrison, head of AI at Swedish Radio. And I know you're an expert both in AI, but also in journalism. So I think this is a perfect combination of skills to really dig deeper into these issues and figure out, how can we keep up with news these days?
Yeah. I mean, that's where I'm coming from, the editorial side, like the journalism side. So basically, I moved into this AI space because I've been interested for a long time, since I worked at Svenska Dagbladet, and we did a lot of digital transformation there like 10, 15 years ago. I mean, I've been interested in this kind of crossroads between tech and journalism. Wow. And to see that, I mean, with the internet, we can create a much better journalistic experience for people, basically. You have links to follow, not just a numb paper or a product on TV that you can't interact with. So that was a big revelation for me. We did something called the interest rate map, räntekartan. You could compare with your neighbor, like your mortgage rate, and it became a very big digital success. That was like more than 10 years ago. So therefore, I think it was a little bit natural that I ended up in the AI space. And I just have to do a disclaimer. I'm not a technical expert, of course, but maybe I can bring some of the editorial expertise that I think we need to handle all these new features in a responsible way. So that's more my role, and to oversee our strategies.
But, and we will come back to this as one of the big deep topics, because you're hitting a raw nerve when you're talking like that, because I think there is a shift that needs to happen. How we get value out of data and AI needs to start with this intersect between the domain you're in and what the techniques are used for, and an adoption focus and all what that comes with, not starting in the tech corner, but starting in the real business corner. And I think we need more of that. So let's go back there later.
Yeah, please.
No, I'm also thinking, I worked at Spotify before, and you can see how tech can revolutionize an industry like music. Yeah. In many ways, especially from a consumer point of view, but also from a producer point of view, especially these days where Spotify is also trying to help not only the consumers, but also the producer, the creator of music. And I guess the same happens for news, right? That especially the consumers is deeply affected by the technological revolutions that we're seeing. But isn't that also the case for journalism? And there's so many different dynamics going on at the same time. So, for example, some people like, the future of journalism is more personalization. Yeah. And I believe in that for podcasts, for example. You can't have a podcast app that isn't personalized. Whereas for news, if you have news websites that look completely different, I mean, they're useless, because you also want a sense of what is the kind of the national scene of news. What's the assessment from the big news brands at the moment? To compare that to music, though, I mean, in one sense, you want to hear music that you really like yourself, that is very specialized, but you also want diversity. You also want to discover new music that you never heard before, and listen to the top lists.
Like the serendipity and actually that's a value that we can bring also in a linear experience. Actually, you can end up with something that you didn't know. But talking about the dynamics that are going, so I often think that customers, the audience, the citizens, they are, of course, personalizing their own experience through use of different services. So they are doing their own daily mix of some news there, some music from Spotify, some linear radio in the car, some visits to LinkedIn or whatever they have, some conversations they have in real life. So this kind of blend that people are doing in their media consumption, because I don't know, is it like normally 8 hours a day that people consume media, or it's something like staggering amount like that, and then to see and analyze the different kind of patterns, the different audience behaviors, like for example in different age groups. That's very important for a brand like Swedish Radio.
But I think what Olle is onto now here is also a vastly different challenge than the debate to compare to Spotify. And this is when you come to the core topic of personalization of news, and you end up in filter bubbles. Yeah. So the core problem here is that you have the news and journalism is about uncovering the truth or uncovering something that we can sort of all relate to. And one of the major problems that we have seen with social media and all that is that, when the algorithms steer that you listen to voices that has on different sides of the political scale or the war, so to speak, you then have alternative truth. Now, this to me is a hugely different challenge than have we want personalization in news.
Formalize this as a proper question.
This is a good topic, by the way.
Yeah.
So take it later.
Is digitalization of news actually polarizing people more than before? Is that a valid question?
The thing is, my blunt answer is no, because I think that polarization has been going on for hundreds of years. And it was more polarized in the Middle Ages, when people like cut each other with swords or whatever. Jokingly, I mean, when the BBC was formed, that was formed 102 years ago as a reaction against the US polarization of wireless, which the broadcasting was called back then. So it was actually that they started with radio in the US. It became very rapidly, seriously commercialized and very polarized because, I mean, radio stations were owned by like Standard Oil or General Motors or something like that. And it became like really bipartisan and all these kind of things. And then the Brits said, as an anti-reaction, that we want to form a public service broadcaster in the service of all citizens and to bring the best to the greatest number of homes without fear or favor. Those kind of things that they said. So, of course, there are maybe digital platforms that are fueling polarization, of course. But also, I think that this is something almost in the human DNA.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you put a completely more nuanced view on this because this is nothing new. It's just something we always had to contend with, and now we need to understand how to contend with it in a digital space. So interesting. But this is
I remember an old discussion. I went to some AI conference a while back, I think in 2016 or something, and it was a YouTube researcher, and he spoke about the YouTube algorithm for recommending videos. And they basically had three metrics that they measured by. One was relevance, like relevant for the search or for the person. Another was novelty, how recent it is. And a third was diversity. Mm-hmm. So they basically said, they explicitly add diversity to the recommender system to make sure they have a diverse view. And I think, a common view, as you said, Henrik, is that recommender systems always just goes into a filter bubble, but you can actually use technology to do the opposite, as well.
It's like, what's the AI function you put up here? And I think the core topic, if we want to have a better society, is about having a balanced function, that objective, like three objectives, as an example.
Yeah, and I mean, there are a number of, including us, number of public service media companies who are designing public service algorithms that both gives prominence to kind of diverse voices, but also, for example, Wiley in Finland, they did an algorithm or an exploration with an algorithm that was feeding kind of the contrarian perspective. Like,
exactly.
So they wanted to break out of these, if they exist, these filter bubbles, and then kind of give the opposite view or another angle. And I think that's very important in relation to our public service mission. Sometimes people are like, oh, public service media, it's so politically correct and you're not telling the full truth because, for example, we're anonymizing quite a lot of names for like people are suspected of crimes, Mm-hmm. And we have that debate, and I think it's good that it's debated. But at the same time, I mean, if you would be a fly on the wall to our editorial conversations, it's often that's like, so what are the 360 perspectives around this? And also, you can almost say any kind of controversial statement on radio if it's not kind of inspiring racist hatred or being liable or something like that. So I think that is something that we always have to, what you call it, work with as public service broadcasters, also to be true to that commitment, that to have really diverse voices also in relation to politics or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, interesting.
Could we just go back and at least do this sort of, how did you end up where you are and and do?
My next question was basically, what does a head of AI at Swedish Radio actually do?
Yeah, so I'm head of AI and also news strategy, and we're trying to link the two together because for us it's about also primarily doing editorial innovation, and linking that to our primary mission, which is also to report like impartial and quick and news.
Could we break it down like editorial innovation?
Yeah. I mean, it could be a better app experience, for example, for news, and we do we curate our news playlist or basically our news flow with an editorial algorithm that we use, and we do that through news values. So we grade or rate every news item with 3 dimensions, like the magnitude, the lifespan, and also some special public service values like diversity, new perspectives, being on location, having affected voices, great audio storytelling. Those are kind of SR values that we give prominence. So basically, we have an automation doing our news playlist.
Sounds very similar to the YouTube algorithm, actually.
Yeah. Well, we don't have any commercial components, and we don't have any kind of engagement components deliberately, because we don't want we don't want the clicks to affect where the news is on the website, for example. But that is the kind of stuff that I do. But in this newly created role as head of AI, I run. It's a company-wide role. So we're trying to advance AI-related projects, not just in the news departments, but also in HR, economy, technology, tech. What's happening now with Copilot and Bing? How are we going to use it? Or what happens now when AI skills are entering Adobe?
So the AI role is broader than just
it's
news perspective.
Yes, it's very broad.
It's a Swedish radio perspective.
Yes, that's why it's also a bit stressful now, because now we're for example making an AI plan for 2024, and that has to be really kind of projects from all around the company.
Oh, I'm so eager to hear more about what you think about ChatGPT driven news articles and whatnot, but let's wait with that for a short while. How long have you been at the head of AI role?
This is only since the 1st of October.
Oh,
but I've been working with this kind of stuff for the past 3.5 years.
Yeah, but okay. So do the very quick summary of your sort of career in Swedish Radio, because you have a very interesting, in my opinion, you're deeply rooted in the domain of radio and news and journalism, and then moving into.
So I've been there for close to 8 years.
Yeah,
and before that, I had one previous kind of spell at Swedish Radio, like 23 years ago, as an intern at Ekot, the national news department.
Cool.
So I was intern, and then I came back as the boss. So that was how I started Swedish Radio, was now in this period as the head of the national news department.
And then you came from Svenska Dagbladet.
Yeah, I was before. I see myself as a business journalist still. Yeah. So I was an old reporter. I was a TV presenter and reporter, and then at TV8, which was a very small channel, but with pretty great journalistic ambitions back in those days, but very few viewers. And then after that, I went in. I started at E110, which was a business website, and also then at SvD Näringsliv, which is the business section of
SvD.
Yeah, and SvD. And then I became the head of that section, and then became what we call redaktionschef, like managing editor or deputy editor. And I was that for 2 years, and then I moved into Swedish Radio.
And for people not in Sweden, Svenska Dagbladet is the biggest Swedish morning newspaper.
Yeah, it's the second,
Second
biggest.
Which one is the biggest?
Dagens Nyheter is
Dagens
the
Nyheter
biggest, but
has that gone up and down over the
yeah,
years?
well, they're competing.
It's in the hundreds in difference.
Yeah, but no, they're a bit bigger actually. But it's more that Svenska Dagbladet is more. You can compare it maybe to Telegraph or Times in the UK. So it's a little bit like center, right-wing leaning in the politics, but of course then doing impartial journalism. So,
all right, and then Sveriges Radio. How would you frame what is Sveriges Radio?
Sveriges Radio is the big public broadcaster or audio-focused company in Sweden. 2,260 staff. We have representation in 51 locations around the country. 26 local stations with 20-25 staff. So the big countrywide network is the thing of Swedish radio.
And you have how many channels?
Then we have quite a few channels, but the main 4 channels are called P1, P2, P3, P4 with different profiles.
Yep.
And mostly the news is coming out in all channels, but of course a lot of local news in P4. Which are the regional channels. And then now, of course, P1 is our spoken word channel, so that's also a big platform for news. But actually, now we're having the app as our primary news destination. We want to engage people there. So Swedish Radio has, in a country of 10.4 million, we have 7.3 million listeners a week. So it's
on
still
the app?
No, around 1 million on the app.
Okay.
So, but still, I mean, so the linear in the car or in a shop or at home in the kitchen, I mean, that's still the dominant way of consuming.
But the core point here, I think, the app is the one destination, and from the one destination, you branch out to, the different types of profiles that you find in the different radio channels.
Yes, exactly, and so it's a starting point for the engagement. Yeah.
Can you just briefly describe how did what was really the origin for creating a role called Head of AI? Were you part of that, or do you know why they chose to start that kind of role?
I think one thing that we were already before the pandemic talking a lot about, like whether we should have a separate AI strategy or if it were just a tool to enhance existing strategies. Then stuff slowed down a lot during the pandemic. And I personally worked more than did a journalism AI collab at the London School of Economics. I learned more. We had some automation AI projects already going. And then I think it was, as everything, it was more the generative models that kind of really got our asses in gear and that we had to move quicker. And especially for us, it almost goes back to trust. So we got this policy guidelines for generative AI out before the summer, and that was very deliberate. So we sped up that process because we wanted to tell all our reporters and editors that this is the approach that they should have with generative images or texts or whatever they can use it.
What are the guidelines? Can you just briefly
describe this? This is a huge, important topic. How does public service, what's the policy and guidelines around generative AI? Because there's such a learning point on that for other companies.
Yeah, I mean,
I added as a separate topic, so
we can.
Because I think it's a great.
I mean, I added as a separate topic.
Yes, we can include it as a link.
Please go for it. What are the guidelines of generative AI?
It's about linking them to our normal editorial processes. Like we have a responsible editor for every piece of content, and if we use or want to use an AI-generated voice or a piece of content or an image, we can do that, but it has to be approved by the responsible editor. And it has to be a human in the loop who's overviewing that and going back to our editorial guidelines. So I mean, the main point is not the AI for us. I mean, we use AI every day. We've been using Google Maps or whatever, to
Google search.
I really
Yes.
love this because
Yes.
it's not a technique. It's the process and having an ethical or
Yes.
a good, stable, robust, trusted process. And now I have a technique, and that new technique should be scrutinized as any other things we do. And but of course, then we need to learn what that is all about. And this is you need to be more specific. But in reality,
But if you go to the details here, you have a responsible editor. Is that a different person than a managing editor or something?
Yeah, the responsible editor is a legally responsible editor. So if you have and that's the whole publishing system in Sweden. So if you have one article, you have to know who's the responsible editor for that article. Yep. Normally it's the editor-in-chief for a newspaper. Yes. In Swedish Radio, which is so big, it's the local station manager or it's the head of Ekot. And you handle all these very tricky sometimes editorial decisions. Should we publish this name? Or in Me Too, for example, that was a nightmare with all the names coming out.
Yeah.
And then they have to decide. But I just wanted to say that this is normal procedure for us. But around AI, there are so many unknowns still, especially with how the models work.
And it's the competence actually to do your job now. So you need to train these guys to have an understanding.
Yeah, and what kind of data are we leaking to the AI services? So, for example, one measure of caution that we have is that you can't register for an AI service with your SR account.
Oh, really? So you have to use a private account or some kind of
yes.
So this
account.
is interesting. So you basically say you as an individual, if you want to check the grammar with an AI tool, go ahead and do it as a private person. But so you're focused on individual efficiency, then bringing it back in.
Yeah, but for example, let's say we do a big investigation around Ericsson, and 10 different people are starting to do deep prompting about that company. That's a kind of aggregated data that we don't know how that can end up, and so that's a measure of precaution, as I said. So that is one reason, and so it's a paradox maybe that we are encouraging in a lot of ways to people to explore generative AI, but at the same time having these. It's the same, for a lot of governmental departments, but also for public service media companies in Sweden. We can't download TikTok to our work phones.
Yeah. So we have a set of best practices, perhaps we can call it, or
some
recommendations.
And we have a lot is about ethics, legal stuff. So we have one AI lawyer now.
Who is an AI lawyer, so that is focusing only on AI questions?
He's doing on copyright and AI.
Yeah.
And then we have a GDPR lawyer also who's also working on this, and one for program ethics, and she's also working a lot with AI. So that is one focus.
You need to have, but you need to have the competence around to have a sounding board, a professional sounding board on this, for sure.
I mean, and imagine all the legal contracts if you do cloned voices. Who owns that voice? What happens when that person dies? That kind of stuff. What happens if that voice is reading a serious mistake and somebody comes up to that person on the street like, why the hell did you say this? It wasn't me. It was my cloned voice. Yeah. And then so
many
ethics,
dimensions.
legal, and then learning activities for staff to make better journalism about this, but also kind of learn better about, for example, digital forensics and AI fakes and that kind of stuff. And then the first focus is to point out the strategic direction and to put our efforts into projects that can make more specific value for us, specializing on audio and public service news.
So what can journalists at Swedish Radio do and do not do, so to speak, when it comes to generative AI at Swedish Radio? Can it, if it has some, nice lead, it wants to write an article, can it just prompt ChatGPT, take the content and edit that?
I mean, we always have to. Good example. So one colleague of mine, Kalle Kovacs in Blekinge, he said, "This is AI is my companion in the afternoons." Because colleagues tend to go home pretty early and people get tired, including me. So I often ask the AI to kind of propose a headline for a story. And he's doing multi-step prompting. Yep. But he never just takes that headline. He always kind of scrutinizes it. Sometimes it's completely wrong. Sometimes it's a fantastic headline. But he deliberately kind of makes his editorial.
But it's the companion.
Choice.
It's the companion idea.
Yes.
It's the sidekick view on
exactly,
on how
and
you get
that's. So, can I ask you guys? I mean, when you do this podcast, for example, do you use like AI in the process to kind of bounce questions off, or
we use it, I think, quite a lot, all of us.
So, summarize how we use ChatGPT for this production, or any other AI.
That is a very simple question. We do not.
You do. You do.
No, so we do post-production basically when it comes to summarization and marketing of it. Yeah. But not actually in polling questions and etc. That usually comes from the hosts, and we are looking into the background, and then Anders or Henrik will actually write a little bit more.
It's because you have so great hosts.
Yes, but keep in mind that this podcast has always been designed to take as little as possible in preparation, but and provide in the same time rational and realistic conversation between 3 or 4 people having after work, and you cannot do that if you overproduce it.
Yeah.
So we don't use AI for pre-production.
But I would also argue that the whole process of thinking out the questions is also a little bit like sometimes Anders take it, like this time with Olle, or sometimes I take it, and it's part of the fun. Oh, I really want to ask this guy about this guy. So the guy who gets to ask the questions is a little bit like in the steering seat. Where do we take this? What's the editorial direction on this pod? Which is fun, and I don't want to give that away.
I'm
to be honest,
flattered that you're interested in what I have to say.
No, but there's so many interesting angles here, and this time I let Anders think about them.
Awesome. Great to hear that you do have some guidelines in how to use generative AI. And I think a lot of companies, because I guess most companies have so great use of generative AI in some way, and they all should have perhaps a responsible editor in some way, or some guidelines or best practices.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have seen in the last 6 months some appalling things happening.
Like what?
Like my AI on Snapchat.
Right.
So it's a bot that actually starts a conversation with my 14-year-old daughter. And she hasn't asked for it. So it's like, how are you doing? Or if she just says something to it, it starts to try to engage her. So my daughter and a friend posted a picture to it. And it said, "Oh, nice painting there at the wall besides your picture or whatever of them, you know." And 2 Danish scientists, they tried to provoke this bot by saying that they were a 13-year-old girl who was going to a date with an 18-year-old older man, and the bot then said, "Oh, maybe it's not so appropriate that you do it," but they kept on going. And in the end, they said, "So if this is going to be your first time, please make sure to make it romantic with candlelights and stuff like that," you know? And these are kind of AI things that they have just kind of put out there. And they have explicitly said also, it's like, this is an experiment. And I think that we're playing with fire and our kids' maybe mental health, you know?
So heavy stuff.
Yes, and that kind of shit, you know, I think it's very inappropriate.
Yes. Now, I think that is something that is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And just you have the audacity actually to put on the market something like that without thinking about the casualties and how this will affect people, that is completely irresponsible.
And I don't think, Goran, that we have a good overview of the societal consequences of some of these services. I mean, it has all happened so quick. So who knows how many people have been asking ChatGPT for medical advice, for example? We don't know.
No, we don't know.
True. But especially for social media, this especially if you look at Snapchat, is oriented towards younger generation. Yeah. My daughter is 15, and that is their predominant, not social media, also social media, but also at a communication channel.
Yeah,
and they're charging for it as well at this point of time, 22 crowns or something like that. I don't know what was it. So imagine that. Maybe you should make it romantic. What the shit is that?
Because the scary part is it has already, like, take the example of Snapchat. It is in the fabric of a 15-year-old today. You can't live without Snapchat in your daily. So when you sneak in AIs in that context and without a clear label of declaration, it is very, very scary. How can a 13-year-old, 15-year-old distinguish? And
I wonder how they managed to put this in scale, in production, without informing every single person, especially children under age of 18 or their parents about these changes. You cannot just have like, oh, look at the painting that you have behind. That means that you're analyzing every single pixel of that thing. That is intrusion to the highest degree. So I'm completely opposite to AI Act, but I will now say just like, roll on, man. Let's put this in December.
I mean, it's clear that it's needed. I mean, like, so the whole
use case driven.
I mean, like the debate on AI Act, that's a
yeah.
different story. But I think it's super needed. That it's more about the execution that is the challenge.
We need regulation for sure.
Yeah, we need
and
regulation.
But we need proper.
And we need the whole package, not only a thin regulation and no guidelines and no money behind it.
No, but I mean, it's. So for us, I mean, it's one thing about being responsible is also being transparent and also explaining to the audience what you do. So that's another thing in our guidelines. And that's more uncharted territory. How do you explain? Now, actually, we have a process in the making of under the umbrella of the Swedish Publishing Association to try to see if we can come up with a common standard for phrasing and explaining AI to the audience. It's going to be very hard because maybe we're not going to do it at all, but we're going to give it a serious go and have a conversation. But what I mean also with the major players that we see, Snapchat, they're not here to defend themselves, but I've seen some comments that, we don't think that this is good, but we're trying to improve the security, whatever, but also saying that this is an experiment. No disclosures, as I've seen in the actual kind of service. Now we see, of course, that, like, for example, Meta with Instagram. I heard an ad the other day that, hey, go in with your personal settings for your teenager and talk about responsible use of Instagram, because they have had these debates with suicide groups on Instagram, for example. And who do you think would sit down with your teenager and say, let's talk about your filters and your what accounts we should block on Instagram, your settings? Like, no teenager would do that. So it would be just saying like, okay, Dad, we can do this. And then they create a separate account or something. So I think that the tech giants are trying to sound now very responsible. And I think for Ernest that they are doing some good things and also trying to, what you call it, counter, do self regulation almost, like before big regulation is coming in. But I think that a lot of these kind of awakenings have been very, very late. And maybe going into one of your other topics here, we can also see with for example, OpenAI, that they have transformed by also the commercial or capitalistic logics that is behind a lot in the world. And I mean, it's completely natural that they went from this maybe more altruistic company into chasing profits like Google did also. They were compelled.
I have a topic similar to like the race to AI production in some sense, and commercialization versus safety, etc. So we can go there.
Yes.
But perhaps before we move, so many questions. But before we go to other questions about the future of AI or in journalism and race to AI in production, can we perhaps give some examples of some AI projects you are having at Swedish Radio?
Yeah.
This is what I was going to go for, that I wanted to have this better overview of what is AI and what are you working on. So you stole it. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're waiting for Goran to come back. But I so we can show maybe and play.
You have some
an example.
But start with an overview of the different.
So basically, I mean, we have them in different categories. For us, the primary thing are the audience-facing things. So
what's the alternative? If it's not audience-facing, is it
then
other
it's
companies?
more internal productivity.
Internal.
For example, if I start with that one, and that is very much on our agenda now at the moment. For example, the Office 365 package with Copilot.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it's a whole menu of different AI skills that we are offered there, but it's also substantial costs. So they want, I mean, I think it is like 300 crowns per user per month.
Yeah.
So, hey, we have 2,200 staff. So, I mean, it's substantial cost if we should roll it out to everybody. Bing, can we use it now, the AI search in Bing in a responsible way for us? What kind of copyrights issues are there? Are there issues around bias built into the models, those kind of things? And yeah, trying to be also more effective in our work processes with the A of, for example, AI inspiration or structuring Excel files, reports. You know, you can do that in such an efficient way, or our lawyers can use AI to get better summaries of big kind of law proposals or something. So that's one thing. If we now move into some of the audience-facing explorations, I already talked about this kind of news curation that we do with our editorial algorithm. But one example is the cloned voice.
Yes.
So this is actually in production. Can
we have a look at it?
Yeah. We can have a look. Can people see the screen? We can go further here. Yeah. So it's actually slide 6.
So when was this presented?
This has been. I'm sick of my own voice because I've been presenting this so many times. But so I can just run you through a couple of examples. Transcription for our newsrooms. This is internal still to make our audio more searchable. So if you click this one, you will have. This is an article about Zelensky. So if we press play, then I go over here and go to our internal system to transcribe that, and we can see how it.
Nice visualization as well we have there.
Line by line, like this. Here we use the Microsoft Azure model, but we have built our own transcription model also, and. Then it says the Ukrainian president Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky is like a ski. It's like a Swedish ski resort, you know.
Yeah.
Zelensky.
Yeah.
It sounds like Zelensky.
Yeah. And then the system learned it was like SVT. They are doing a lot of automatic texting, and it was Korven 19, sausage 19 in the beginning of the pandemic, you know, before it learned.
But is this so? Is it from a newsread? It transcribes
from what a reporter says in the story.
Yeah.
So of course we have a lot more content in the audio than what we publish in text.
So now you have a much faster way to create the text piece out of the audio piece.
Yeah. So that's one example. If we move to the next, I can just we can post maybe the
link later.
Yeah, the link later. If we go to the next slide. Yeah. Press one more time, Goran.
Yeah, move forward in this.
Yeah. then we want to, it says transcription here, but transcription to users, a great accessibility project that we want to do. Maybe if you press the YouTube link there, maybe we can open another window. Yeah, and I mean, this is, as I said, about accessibility to for all the people that can't hear. You will have a transcription. Yeah, don't show. So here, this is basically a copy of our afternoon show, Studioet, in P1, and the audio here is like it's basically supported.
Han var släkt på långt håll med en gängmedlem. I natt sköts tvåbarnspappan till döds.
Nu hotas
So
uppenbarligen
this is in
även
real
de
time
mer avlägsna
that you can get a
släktband
transcript
till
like
gängkriminella och
like
nationella
like
säkerhetsrådets
subtitle.
möte
Yeah, and
mellan
we want a
partiledare
nicer UX than
Ahlqvist
this,
och
you know.
press.
So
Ska
Spotify,
börja strax.
they are already subtitling a lot of podcasts or transcribing them.
And voice cloning them.
They can't do that with our content, and they started doing that in May, and we were very upset, and we had to call them up, and they stopped.
But one of the
doing
best things when Spotify did that on the music, and it feels like karaoke. Because they do it so brilliantly. They know UX so well, right? So you have the song, and you can with a nice color, normal nice size. It's used.
Yeah.
When you see it the first time, it's like, yep, that's how it should look like. Amazing, right?
And I mean, they are experts in product. We are experts in content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are expert in product is a good statement.
Yeah. So,
But you know what to do with this now. Copy paste.
Go to the next one. This is the cloned voice, actually. So this is Eva Toivonen, one of our P1 presenters. And this is actually an in-production use case. So it's a hybrid between Eva's real voice and her voice clone. So we have such a massive catalog of content. So she couldn't record all the content that we have in the catalog. So it's now the real Eva says, "Thanks for listening." And then it's the cloned Eva who says, "Clio i P3, which is some old weird title that we have scrapped, I think. Yeah. So please.
Tack för att du lyssnar. Här kommer ett avsnitt som vi tror du kommer gilla från Cleo i P3.
So it's very apparent here that it's a cloned voice, but maybe that's good for transparency. And maybe, Goran, the last example, I can talk about this all day here, and then maybe we can go later to some other examples from the market.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. So this one is, we're trying to use generative AI to do. We have had a playlist about before a Euro qualifier, and a playlist with clips from us, but then we made a synthetic intro to it using generative AI and synthetic voice to basically, so we can play
Få en
this.
snabb inblick i lagets tankar, förberedelser och förväntningar inför matchen. Hör vad spelare och tränare har att säga och var redo att stödja Sverige i denna avgörande match.
So that's completely artificial.
Stäm in ikväll.
Sounds really good.
And then our real clip. And then if you go to the next clip, Goran, if you jump to the next clip or skip, then we have a little, from the national captain's view, it's a little interstitial or bridge to the next clip.
But it's just from
So,
but this is the Haloa. This is the AI Haloa.
It's the
This
host.
is the AI host that sort of stitches together. And I think my son always likes to play this when he listens to Spotify. So he has the AI DJ mode on in Spotify. He likes it. I kind of like it too. Do you think it's stupid? Do you know about this?
Yeah.
So basically, it sounds like you're in an American radio station.
DJ X.
DJ. Now we heard the clip from Drake, and now the next song is Eminem. Blah blah blah. You know, but it's this. But the purpose here, of course, is to get the flow and get that sort of more seamless experience.
And it proves that also the linear experience is a very good experience in a lot of senses.
right.
Interesting, isn't it?
People
want it.
Like,
That's a really good comment, I think. It's not just on demand. It's actually having a linear content delivered for you, so to speak.
Yeah, and like in the car, maybe we're not going to look at this video, but we can post a link. So it's about our in-car experience that we're trying to do in a much kind of neater way. That simplicity is everything. You press the button and you get the news, the traffic, the main national headlines, some local news, some sports, and then you go in seamlessly to the linear channel that you prefer.
Oh, right.
So
it's a mix of both.
Yes, in 15 minutes, because the usual drive is normally 15, 20 minutes in Sweden, you should be able to get updated. So we're dabbling with that. Where
So everybody has the personalized linear experience in 15 minutes.
Yes, in the car.
In the car. So basically a bit of news, a bit of the road, a bit of the traffic,
Yes.
and then some, and it starts right when you sit in the car.
Yeah, because people
This is cool.
people don't want complicated media products, All media consumption, to a bigger or less degree, I think, is distraction and entertainment. I'm saying this like a little bit jokingly, because of course it's not entertaining to listen to the latest kind of casualty numbers from Gaza. Of course it's horrible. And there's a lot of news also that you have to be updated for in your professional life. But to go to a news medium is always to a little bit be kind of distracted from your physical life in a sense. It's always been like that.
So
Then I think that the products can't be too complicated. You have to have a paper you can read or a button you can press, or people don't want to do all these complicated settings, I think.
that's why we end up, in my kitchen. I could have Spotify on the whole time. We have Spotify on when we cook pizza, then we want Italian music, right? But if I just go back in and out of the kitchen, we have Petri on or something like that, and it's in the background, right? And it is what it is. So I fully recognize what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I guess in theory, I remember the old vision that Spotify had was you simply should have an app with a big play button on it. That should be it. It shouldn't be necessary to have anything else. But that's probably never going to happen. But if you had something that really understood all your needs and the context you're in right now, it should in theory be able to do. Now you want to have linear content, now you want to have this kind of news. But it's super hard to achieve.
But it like I mirror my phone every day with Spotify. I don't have a really new car. So this one works on our car experience was through CarPlay.
Yeah.
And that the advantage with CarPlay, and 500,000 Swedes have access to that, it's that you can use your normal app, your normal SR app. You don't have to download a separate app as you do in what they call Android Automotive. So you can mirror your own app. I do it with having a cord to my phone.
Yeah, but this is the Apple CarPlay.
No, yeah. Well, now this is even before that. So it's like BMW system, which is not very updated. Anyway, so then of course you have the car mode, and that is a little bit more simplified then, and that's also because, for example, in cars in the US, they have been dabbling with like huge screens, also for the people sitting next to the driver. But of course, if you sit there with a Tesla and you can have video on, I don't know if you can do that when you drive, but you're distracted. So radio and audio in the car has to be very, very easily navigated with just push of a button.
Yeah, amazing that you seem to have so many applications in production as well. I'm going to add that as a question later. How do you actually manage to put applications in productions as well?
We can, if you have time, we can. This is 3 minutes later.
Yeah.
We can watch this video because we were very proud of also like a production of it that we did in 3 days this summer. because
what?
of the in-car experience. And there's a thing linking to music there also.
What do you mean? Like, so you took something, an idea, and put it in production quite fast?
No, we've been working on the product for a longer time. We have what we call the Play X team, which is an innovation team, and they've been working a lot with the car. But we wanted to nominate this for something called Pre-Europa, and therefore in the summer we had to write a script and then do a video like in a very short space of time.
So you made a storytelling in a couple of minutes.
Yes,
explaining the project.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
Awesome. Yes.
But can I
think it's time now. It's time for AI News, brought to you by AI 8W Podcast.
Awesome. So time for some AI news. This is just a break in the middle of the podcast where we're going to speak about some of the latest news, each of one of us, and see if we can bring up some of the more exciting things happening in recent times. I think this week is it's very hard to not choose the same topic. I'm not sure how should we go about doing this, Henrik.
Let me steer it. So I will start with the angle of the news that was updated hour by hour with the oosting of Sam Altman, the soap opera of the Kardashians of
the Kardashians of AI.
That was your LinkedIn comment, right?
Yes.
The Kardashians.
This is definitely Kardashian. I'm waiting for what is.
It's amazing.
I'm waiting for
Kanye West to come into play here.
Yeah, but let's. I mean, like it's been everywhere. It's been.
Wait, I would like to explain what happened very quickly.
Okay.
So I made a drama about this a bit, right?
Oh, you really? Okay.
So last Friday, the worst.
You only have 2 minutes. You know that.
I'm going to do this very quickly. Right?
Okay.
So last Friday, Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, gets invited to a meeting, knocks on the door, gets in. They're saying you out. He gets pissed off. Goes out.
I think it was a Google Meet meeting, but
yes, okay. So it was a Google meeting actually. That was around noontime, and then
not even physical.
Yes, exactly. A few minutes later, the board actually. So he's been fired by the board, and in the board, of course, there are two people in this, which is Sam and Ilya, right? So this is basically where the drama comes in, the Kardashians. So Ilya manages to fire Sam. Sam goes out. And Sam is followed by this other character who is very important for OpenAI called Greg. And they are saying like, fuck it, we're leaving. We're going to start a new AI chip company. And then Microsoft says like, shit, we invested a lot of money, 10 billion in this company. 49% of all of our money is going to go to waste. So they're speaking with a lot of investors and like, this cannot happen. They cannot open a new company. If they are leaving, we need to get them into Microsoft.
I just have to interrupt. I mean,
yes.
The ship company idea, I think, happened before that. So they already had an idea to start that. But okay.
Right. Okay, good. Yes. Thank you for correcting this.
Editorial correction.
Yeah.
On the fly.
This bullshit overview.
No AI. It's no AI. It's
right.
English.
So now Microsoft and all the investors are pissed off and they're saying like they're putting pressure on the board. The board says like, okay, maybe we should allow them to come back. So on Sunday, Sam tries to come back. He gets like a badge thing, or comes to his own company, and they say like, we changed our mind, goodbye. Right? So what happens after that? Microsoft and the board say like, this is bad. What the shit is happening? So I think that the board should go. So they're firing the board, and then Sam is back. And that concludes everything. So the capitalists win.
I mean, yeah, I'm not very happy with that overview. But
I think it's a very good overview. That is what happened. If this was a cartoon, this is how it would happen.
No, but okay.
I mean, so many angles on this.
But let me take two angles. Okay. Let me take it from here and take it back on. So this is in a nutshell, like you how you get the, you know, when you see a new Mandalorian episode and you get what has happened before, like 2 seasons in 30 seconds. And the two main angles I want to draw out of this is on the one hand side, the do's and don'ts of a board, like the angle here of how did the board actually act here. And, you know, there is some wild misunderstandings or misinterpretations of the consequences of their actions. Like they start something that just blows up. So it's a very interesting analysis of thinking carefully about how to set up a board, the construct of the board, responsibility of the board, but then also from the board members taking action in such a way without thinking through the consequences. So this is the one angle I want to highlight. The other angle is actually Microsoft, literally playing a masterful game of chess on 5 levels. So if you think carefully of Satya's types of tweets and what they offered was literally, in a way, at some point in time, they were almost doing an acqui-hire, acquisition hire. Like basically, instead of buying a company for $13 billion, getting the right people in.
I mean, they invested 19, I believe, and the company's worth 86 billion to some valuation. Now they potentially got all the people and the knowledge for only that small investment that they had for 49%. And they would potentially be a super win-win solution if they had proceeded.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the end game.
No, but
that was actually putting pressure on the board.
No, but
because if 700 people from 770 people,
90% of the people.
90%. So the CEO, the Greg is going, and 90% of their staff is leaving to Microsoft. What do you have for a company? Yes, they were threatening. They didn't came. No, that is actually the pressure.
No, but the bottom line here. The bottom line here. If the board played this really, really badly, I would argue Microsoft played this brilliantly.
Yes,
perfect. So basically, they were playing chess in what they had 3 or 4 or 5 different scenarios, and whatever scenario comes out, we're the winners. So brilliantly played by Microsoft in the way how they managed this, how they communicated about this, how they were supportive but kept things open, and they were basically winning either way.
Yeah. Do you think that they knew beforehand?
No, I don't think so. I think they are super brilliant, smart people to read the situation. I mean, like if the board read the situation incorrectly, Microsoft understood and read the situation and the scenarios correctly, and then played a game that they didn't put themselves in one corner. They played it such to a win, and it's brilliant, really brilliant enterprise businessmanship, business acumen.
And maybe it also proves the importance of experience, like in this Game of Thrones in the corporate life.
The corporate setup, and you can almost, if you look at the board perspective here, the board. I mean, like it's Ilya, right? Who is a researcher, a brilliant researcher, and maybe the real brain of OpenAI, the real brain of OpenAI, but not a corporate business guy in this sense, I think.
But my joke was a little bit maybe...
And maybe he didn't even play it. He didn't realize what he was getting himself into.
You have to understand that this is also what is called like a duel between capitalism and... to some sense, this effective altruistic
maybe not.
Right, but in general, I think this was a cockfight. And
I think the board was so horribly bad here. I mean, they appointed a person after they fired Sam, which was Mira Murati.
Who's an excellent person, by the way.
She later were replaced by Emmett Shear. Both Mira and Emmett Shear then went against the board that appointed them and said, we want Sam back. The person that they themselves like appointed. And I mean, it's so horribly bad played by the board. But what's even worse, when they, I guess on Monday or Tuesday later said that Sam is coming back, they're not taking the awesome position at Microsoft. They are actually trying to reunite the people at OpenAI and create a new company again with Ilya and Sam and Greg and everyone else.
Who is on this board anyway?
Yes, the weird thing with that was it was one person called Adam D'Angelo or something.
Yeah,
he was like the Quora guy, and Quora, they had basically it's a question answering site. They basically are getting killed by ChatGPT because you don't need to go to Quora anymore. You can just ask ChatGPT. They also actually had a GPTs store or a similar kind of thing that they announced in the dev days by OpenAI. So they had everything to lose by having them announce what they did on the dev days 2 weeks ago. The weird thing is that Adam is still on the board now, in the new board. Everyone else, Sam is out, Ilya is out, Greg is out of the board, and they are getting some new people in.
One Salesforce guy and one from...
Yeah, a Salesforce guy, some economist or something, Larry or whatever his name was. But why is Adam still there? I mean, I think he was driving the whole change.
Yeah.
This is so many weird questions still.
He was represented. He was representing a fund that actually started the entire. So keep this in mind. This is an all capitalist game right now. What happened on Friday was basically very emotional type of a decision without thinking how the investors will think about it. We're talking about a company that is making 1 billion revenue now per year, that is valuated on a very, very high thing. And you just basically, you two guys are going to play jackasses and going to fire each other. What do you think? This is not even, I mean, this is a corporate and capitalistic thing. It's not nothing special. I mean, Microsoft had 49% of the company. You think that they will risk such thing for some trivial?
If you have a 49% owner and they don't know about the stuff 2 days before it's happened, disaster.
Yeah.
Anyway, we stop there.
You can reason about whatever kind of motivation that the board has to do this, and it's been so many conspiracy theories about why they acted as they did. Everything from the mistrust for whatever he's been deceptive back and forth, and Elon Musk had his own kind of thing, which I'm not going
putting
to say
petrol on the fire.
Yeah, but one of the recent thing that I know you said as well, Olle, was the Q-star thing. So one potential reason for this, which is of course pure speculation, we don't know for sure, but one potential reason is that they actually had come very close to AGI, something that could be GPT-5, that is using something called the Q-star algorithm. And it's kind of funny for me because, I did my PhD like 20 years ago in Q-learning. Q-learning was actually one part of...
What is Q-learning?
Quantum learning, or what is it? No.
So it's a type of reinforcement learning.
Uh-huh.
And reinforcement learning has been used for the normal GPT 3.5 and 4 as well. But this is a type of... I can go into techniques if you want, because this is something I've studied quite a lot. But Q-learning is simply a type where you map both the state and the action to some value. Instead of traditional temporal difference or Monte Carlo learning, you actually have an algorithm that maps the...
this is not it. I will show something.
No, that was not it.
I will talk about it, actually. That is
but anyway, it is basically trying to map potentially two kind of algorithms. One is Q-learning. It's simply a way to find, how can you reason in an efficient way, to another kind of algorithm called A-star. A-star is just a search algorithm where you have a big tree or graph of states and you want to find, the shortest path to something else. And it's one of these, it's been around since I think the 60s or something, this kind of A-star, mapped with the Q-learning that's been around since the 80s. I think, one way to describe this is basically, if you take the traditional GPT-4s, they have a great perception component. They have an ability to understand text and now also audio and video, but still they have the perception ability. They didn't have the high level of reasoning, and they didn't have the control ability. So if you take the self-driving car, they basically have these three components: the perception, which Elon calls going from the raw data into some vector space, but then you have to have also some kind of planning, reasoning capability, and that didn't really GPT-4 have. If you take another one that did have the reasoning capability, which is basically AlphaZero, and these kind of reinforcement learning algorithms that were able to play chess better than any human, or play Go better than any human, or do StarCraft, or whatever. They have beaten humans to a superhuman level by far. So they had the reasoning ability, but they didn't have the perception ability. They didn't have the world model. So we had now one system that was awesome when it comes to the world model perception ability. And we have another system that was awesome in the reason, but didn't have the world model. Now if you put that together...
And this is maybe...
Then
GPT-5.
you have a system that have...
So the speculation is that your Q-star is adding that missing link to the rest of the chat.
Combining both the perception and the world model that they had with the normal GPT-4 with the high-level reasoning coming from Q-star learning. Now, this would add high-level reasoning to an awesome perception. And basically what they said, someone said, in Q-star, they basically 100% mathematical accuracy being able to do these kind of mathematical
So the speculation here now, like now we're part of the whole speculation train, is about ChatGPT 5 being something quite...
Let's call it, ChatGPT is an application, GPT is
GPT-5,
the model.
yeah.
So GPT-5 potentially then the model itself.
has taken a huge leap because they have the Q-star approach added to it.
They had high-level reasoning combined with perception, which potentially comes much closer to AGI than anything
And all of a
else.
sudden now there is a high-pressure game going on. What the hell do we do now?
Yes.
And where does this speculation come from? Because it's been floating around on a couple of different, where do we see this? Where did you find this?
And it's been on OpenAI's forum. So OpenAI have their own forum discussion boards, and you can see them speculating about Q-star and whatnot. And there's still speculation.
But this is an interesting angle on the story. There's the Q-star that started it all.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not so weird that Sam Altman didn't tell the board if they had these board members on. I mean, it's also about. I mean, I used to work in different kind of stock listed companies like Schibsted and MTG. And if there was something big going on, I mean, you can be charged with the insider crime if you leak it or act on it. And I mean, it's a lot about secrecy. And of course, Sam Altman and all the rest of them, of course, they know this. But I mean, this kind of information is so sensitive, and I can see why they wanted to control the way that it came out. Now it came out anyway because of this debacle.
When we make a movie out of all this, of course, this adds to the whole drama, this speculation, and
this is a Netflix movie. Definitely.
This is a Netflix movie, and the interesting thing is, of course, something major must have happened for them to act like that, and they have not then following up when people ask them why did you fire him, and have been very vague around that. Yeah. It's something deeper here. And
what do you think, all about the whole story? Did you follow it closely, or what was your?
Not closely, but I think to do the little meta news angle on this, I think that this taps into the normal logic of business journalism, basically, which is to follow the kind of human drama. The papers are specialists at that. Dagens Industri, our business title here in Sweden, it was a person-focused tabloid for business. Always saying that if the CEO of, for example, Volvo or Ericsson, if they made huge profits, he was like, he made like 18 billion crowns in the last quarter, always kind of personifying news.
In order to make it more interesting and
more interesting. People are interested in people, that's why you talk about the Kardashians.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, this has always with OpenAI and 100 million users in a couple of months. I mean, it's always been pinpointed to individuals and these kind of strong characters, and they kind of almost become like cartoon figures, go into Congress and already there. It's like larger than life characters, no? And then then the AI stuff is complicated. I mean, you went into now the Q-star model. I mean, I thought Q-star was a gas station. It is in Sweden. But now it's hard to explain and to get people to understand what's going on in this very, very different, complicated model. Maybe they don't understand fully themselves, in the tech companies. So then if we have an easy story now with Sam Altman getting fired, and
it's easier. We can latch on.
We can relate to that, and who are the new contenders going for this, and,
exactly.
And this is a lousy individual, or this is a great guy.
This is the hero. This is the villain.
The white knight. It becomes like a Shakespearean drama,
and then back to humanity, humans, and we can relate again.
Exactly, we can relate to that. So that was my meta angle. My other take is just that so much other interesting stuff. You talked about this dev weeks that they had. I mean, GPTS, for example, we started dabbling with that at Swedish Radio, doing explore Swedish Radio content.
How did SVT or Swedish Radio, I guess, right?
Yes.
Start to explore GPTS. Can you just elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah,
That's your news.
So my
Are we done with the news?
No, this is the last bit. GPTS in new in radio.
You've spent 20 minutes.
I have 4 news, man.
I know, but we have 20 minutes on this.
Yeah.
Go. Okay. How did the Swedish Radio start to experiment with GPTS?
So my colleague Christian Gillinger, he wrote a little prompt and asked this GPTS model to go to our website and basically pick out information that he inquired for. So, for example, where can I find what's the latest news from SwedishRadio.se? So it answered, I mean, here's the latest broadcast news bulletin from Ekot. It contains latest updates and in-depth stories, blah, blah, blah. Here's a link to that. Or what are the cultural news, he asked. And then it said, I can recommend Kulturnytt when you can find it here. That kind of stuff. I mean, we did it in like 2 hours. So it's just
really? It took 2 hours to
but it works and it's accurate.
It works and it's very accurate and it's very kind of contained also and not hallucinating. I mean, he and another colleague, they made a skateboard app in like also like an hour or so. You could ask complicated questions about building skateboards or whatever it was. So it's tailoring for niche uses. And that's the thing, that so many interesting things are happening then behind this whole spectacle around or the drama around OpenAI. So I think we have to keep 2 thoughts in our heads at once.
Good one. Should we have a second news reel for Goran? We stop and start again.
And now. No, very quickly. So I think that on a side of what has happened with OpenAI that everybody talked about, there was 4 news that I thought they were very relevant for this week. The first thing is that basically Anthropic released the Cloud 2.1, which is a new model, or actually a slightly improved model that has a more basically context window. And the best thing is fine-tuned, so it's less hallucination. So they are extremely proud about that. The second news was...
You know that one story during the whole drama around OpenAI was that they want to merge with Anthropic.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthropic came from people that moved out from what is called from OpenAI because they didn't agree on the AI safety and the risks of AI. So
they have an awesome safety feature with the constitutional AI approach.
Yes,
so
exactly.
They really have a great safety feature.
So if we are talking about on which level did they, so now we are going back to OpenAI. They were a little bit towards the Ilias there. All right, good. So we will not delve any more in that. The interesting thing about Meta actually is moving to generative AI, but instead of that, and how they're doing it, they are basically disbanding the responsible AI team. And they're moving them to generative AI, which is showing that they have decided to move more towards that technology in order to catch up with the rest of the team. It's expected, given that they have been focusing so much on virtual reality and things like that.
But how does this relate to Meta AI research? Like Jan LeCun and these teams. This is different, I think.
So there are different divisions that are actually working on different things within Meta. So I think that one of the teams it's called the RAI. So it's a responsible AI. It's been in the news for some time now that they have been trying to disband this. So now it's official and they're moving them into the Meta's generative AI products. The next news, second last, is that AWS is going into the game now of talent. So they are trying actually to educate around, I think it was 200,000 people. 2 million actually people. Yeah,
1 0 wrong.
Yeah, 1 0 off. So they want basically to educate around 2 million people in basics AI or a little bit more advanced AI. And of course, this is very important for them because they need to catch up with the talent that they have inside. and this is the cheapest way how to do it. And
So it's upskilling inside the company.
yes, upskilling and also educating people from outside, so people can apply for it.
So similar to elements of AI in Sweden.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Goran, do you know? I mean, one of these kind of basic courses around there that the Finnish government offered the whole population to do
Yes,
that.
And we
it is
took
the
it to
element
Sweden.
of
I
AI.
was actually part of that.
Element of AI.
Are we also?
we have a Swedish version of that.
Yeah, I know about elements of it, but
That is the one.
have we actively also promoted that to like
Yes,
the
It's,
whole
it's part of
population?
Linköping University. They actually, you can get credit scores for taking the course as well.
Well, I think that maybe even the government should recommend
Yes,
it,
I know.
but you know they've been very quiet.
They
on
actually
this.
did
Yes,
through
agreed.
AI Sweden. So AI Sweden was the one
Yes.
that was
Yeah, yeah.
publicizing this in Sweden. I actually took the course. It was a nice introduction. Yeah, it's good. The interesting thing for Henrik here, do you know what they call the program?
There, of course.
Yeah, of course. They call it AI ready. Okay, and final.
Actually, we should actually.
Yeah.
No. I've been with the patent law. We talked this after work. I've been with patent lawyers about this.
All right, cool. Good stuff. And the last one is actually, we have continuous on our discussion about AI and art. So some Spanish dudes have managed actually to create like a model, which is, of course, you can do it every 3D journey. Created an Instagram or social media channel. And then people started being crazy nuts for that and offering basically between 1,000 and 3,000 euros for, advertisement and stuff like that. And people started hitting on this person. So they managed like, okay, this is good. So we have some kind of a business here and they're very proud of it. So they have, yes, exactly. This is legal catfishing. Right? That is exactly what it has. 121,000 followers on Instagram, and then the interesting thing is how they're bragging here. What they are saying, like in the first month, we realized that people follow lives, not images. Since she is not alive, we had to give her a bit of reality so people could relate to her in some way. We had to tell a story, and of course, then they Photoshop the shit out of the thing and started creating images like this.
Normal,
Yes.
8 normal clothes.
Yes. And this is so weird. So everything that we discussed right now is there. So this is legal catfishing.
What do you mean with legal catfishing?
Because you see, people are actually even hitting on this person, and they think that this is a life. Yeah. She has 121,000 followers. It's not because, hey, this is the AI generated model. It's actually because it looks like a human being. And they are saying people do not like images. We needed to create life. And then this is what they did.
Did you see the other story about
Jesus? This is where we're going.
Jesus Christ.
generated AI images is more lifelike than real images? You mentioned that as well, Olle, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, maybe in relation to voice, but that's. I mean, yeah. I mean, now it's starting to happen, and just going back to a voice point around that. I mean, I've heard some of these, like it was actually a German company with like not just perfect voice, then everybody can do that nowadays, but like huffs and puffs,
Yes,
and
filler words and whatnot.
and like sounding like us,
more natural.
Yes,
like, yeah,
and yeah, that's scary shit.
it is.
Okay, so that's it.
So that's it. That's done. Yep.
Finally, only 30 minutes of.
You did the left. I like it. Okay, good. Back.
Should we go back?
We're getting better with this.
No, we're getting worse.
We're getting worse. Exactly. Okay, Olle.
Yeah,
You had some awesome examples of how you are starting to experiment with AI in Swedish radio. Can you speak a bit about, how are you set up from an organizational point of view to try to find value as quick as possible in the organization?
it's about having the right individuals and talent who want to do something. Because if you don't have that, it doesn't matter what structures you have. So that you can do in a couple of different ways. You can hire people, and it's very hard for us to kind of go out for the best AI developers, because we can't really compete with that kind of money. We can compete with values, that a lot of people think that it's an important mission to serve the whole population with content. You can do it with training, So some people that are skilled developers, or also from the editorial side, maybe from the newsrooms, we can train them to become better. And especially people from the newsrooms can be very good project managers around AI project, because we always need that kind of publishing eye. Then you can identify people who are good but who are not fulfilling their whole potential. We have a fantastic guy called Carl-Johan Rosén. He built his own transcription translation model like 4 years ago. And he then left Swedish Radio to become an AI artist. But I guess that didn't work so well. So he's back now as a developer in one of our kind of mixer board teams. And he's got some really interesting ideas about how you can frame make an AI model work with better audio quality. So he's one of those individuals. So if we can then create in a quicker way, specially designed or focused teams, if we have projects, and we can pick some of the best people from our whole wide organization into solving this challenge, then we can become more competitive.
So do you have teams or people that work themselves on projects, or do you have like teams working on a more like production line with cross-disciplinary teams?
They should work with what I tell them to work with, that has been a problem actually, that a lot of the AI work in media companies have been stuck on the product side.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to sound cocky or anything, but in a big media company, a lot of the clout and the economic power is, of course, in the management, like in all companies. But the management in like a public service company is almost always from the journalism side.
Right. So not from a tech.
No, not from the tech side. We're trying to have more than tech people also in the management. We have a great CIO now, for example, Ann-Sophie. So, I mean, we have to have that perspective in the management. But at the end of the day, like our CEO, she's an old reporter, started at Swedish Radio when she was 21 in the sports department. And these are the kind of people that also need to understand like the audience value of AI projects. And we have done great stuff, but stuck in what I call a wardrobe somewhere, it's like, oh, what are you doing in here? Yeah, it's something really interesting. And then close the door. And they haven't had the attention and the resources to pursue this. So it's been too much individual work or stuck in some teams. Now we're trying to connect that. Then at the same time, we have to give leeway to pet projects, and we have this kind of at the beginning of every term we have the knowledge sprints. That way you can just go bananas with the crazy ideas and stuff like that. And actually, these AI intros to our news playlists, they were created as an idea in one of those sprints that.
But I'm super curious, because you it sounds great when you're pulling people together on a project from different things, and this is how you really get the magic happening, that you get the cross-functional. But I must ask you, how easy is that in relation to getting people off their normal work, so to speak? So
it's bloody difficult.
So we all know we need to work together in collaborative teams, blah blah blah, but there is no Slack, so we end up ping-ponging and from hell. What is your remedy here, or when you're succeeding, what are you doing right, and when you're failing, what are you doing wrong?
It's grit.
It's grit, right?
It's sweat. I don't say that we do this in a particularly good way, and you identify the biggest headache. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's also that we have so many different priorities, and we have such a kind of a queue of stuff that we haven't done, you know, stuff which
The backlog.
are the backlog,
The line manager
hygiene
backlog.
factors in a normal digital product. You know, we some of that stuff we haven't done yet, and then to say, hey, we're gonna do a more explorative project around this AI implementation.
Great.
It's very hard to achieve.
But
Yeah.
could we be super brutal here and tell the truth? And I think this is a great learning.
Yeah.
In your opinion, can you really solve or do great stuff if you don't get the different people in together? Or isn't that, if you don't do that, you end up stuck in the wardrobe? So the only way to succeed is actually to solve this getting people focused on a project. Can
Yeah.
you do it in any other way?
No, you can. You can try to inspire. You can.
But
try
to do real work, to do real product, to
but-
put something in
but
production.
What at the end of the day, all companies, isn't it like follow the money?
Yeah.
Like cash is king. So if you don't allocate resources to something or
It's
let
dead.
people work on it, then it's dead. So
Bottom line, it's simple.
Even if we don't have to chase our revenues as a commercial media company, because we are
It's
our
the
revenues,
priorities.
we have to set the priorities, we have to set the strategic priorities, and we have to do less of the stuff that is not helping us achieve these goals. So that's why we don't use the word brutal. We try to be more clear about our priorities. And yeah,
I mean, I like that you say that you have some way to go to be a proper like tech company, and you do have a way of having cross-functional team work in an agile way, and moving from avoiding the prototype graveyard. That has been a term that we've spoken about before. It's super simple to build a prototype, but
In
to
the
put it in
closet.
production, it's like 100 times more work.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the setup to do so, you will have a lot of prototypes, but very few value-bringing products.
But isn't this, I think this is, if not the number one problem, is the first order of concern to figure this out. I mean, like, you're not going to end up reorganizing the whole company day one, right? But if you can't figure out the way to get them to get some space, to decouple them from the normal stuff in order to work in this project or product team, it doesn't work.
yeah. No, I completely.
I think it's the
agree.
number one problem.
Yeah, and then I'm apart from the money, it's building relations with the people who are working in the different teams, building relations with their managers, getting them to trust you, to open up. I mean, I was amazed, startled, and grateful. First time I got in with the Play X team and was invited to join them for a hack jam at BBC. It's like, do you want me in your team? It's like, yeah, we'll try it out, Yeah. So I could join. So that is one thing. And the last point I want to make is that if you have a strategy that is clear, we as managers don't have to be involved so much, Then the product owners of different teams, they are cooperating with between themselves, solving problems that we don't even know about, and then they can come and report that, hey, we want to do this, or you have to prolong the financing for this or whatever. So the best projects are often the projects that we think are strategically important, but that we hear the least from.
But this is super important. Another profound topic. Don't you then need to have a way to communicate your strategy in a quite clear, concrete way?
Yes.
So I mean, like, because it can be super fluffy, right? But it needs to go down to a certain objective, certain key results, something we can collect people against that everybody can understand, because then people can move on the floor, so to speak, and collaborate towards that goal. But if that is not defined,
Yeah, we have actually started being inspired by the digital side. We have started with what we call editorial OKRs.
You have OKRs as well.
Yeah, so OKRs, but with kind of journalistic values
Nice.
related to journalism and the product. So that's how we steer
this is an
now our digital.
everlasting problem, I think, for trying to find, people that are not in tech, that is potentially in management, and they don't understand that developing IT takes time, and you have to make a seriously long time investments to build IT support system that build up humans. But instead they are thinking, why not just double the number of heads, people, to get some more, number of news articles out there or something. It's a very classical problem, but we have a bit short of time, so I'm hoping that we can
I
move
was
to
just
another
super
topic.
happy to. There's a couple of things that is on my head. Like, isn't this the number one problem? And you tick two that I think is the one that we should all work on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. If we move from non-tech companies to tech companies, and we take the tech giant companies potentially, and then we speak about the problem that we mentioned a bit before, we are seeing tech giants racing to AI production, if not the least like Snapchat, which I don't use, by the way. But anyway, we have companies that are racing to put up in production large language models and generative AI before potentially they have been properly vetted or properly secured. Would you, for one, agree with that we have that problem today?
I certainly agree with that, and it's both affecting maybe the whole of our societies in a lot of ways that we maybe can't overview or understand, and that of course regulators and governments don't have a clue about what's happening when the titans clash, like in different ways. It can affect the whole ecosystem of other tech companies. Of course, these kind of death stars, the big giants, can kind of direct their laser beam on any kind of smaller companies, including like Spotify or whatever, yes, and kind of completely erase their market or change the market conditions for them. And also, I think, of course, what the big tech giants are doing is affecting us as kind of who are procuring different services from them. Because if they change focus, or if they start charging much more, or if they say they try to entice us with new AI skills in our systems, whether it be Teams or Adobe or the Office suites or whatever it is, it changes quite a lot our workflows. So there are a multi-dimensional challenges around exactly, Anders, what you say here.
What should we do about it? I guess the whole OpenAI debacle and drama is potentially connected to this. And if it is related to Q-Star and that they have getting very close to HEI and they are potentially racing to put it out there, or if it's something else, we don't know. But what is the proper way to handle this then? What can we do to avoid this kind of race to AI production, to keep our, hopefully, kids safe and other parts of the society safe? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, the solution is not to try to, as a parent, try to stop your kid from using it. I think it's vain to try to. It's like trying to stop in Sweden a teenager to ever consume alcohol. Yeah. Then I think that, for example, I know that Canada and Australia have been very hard on Meta and saying that they have to pay, like, for example, the national broadcasters to link. And so I think that Meta has now blocked all kind of news content from right, some of the media companies on their platform. Maybe, the governments or the AI progressive governments are trying different models to kind of put hurdles around the worst or more reckless implementations of AI. I don't have an opinion of that on that, and I just think it's interesting to see these kind of different approaches. And what happens? with Facebook and the big social platforms like 10 years ago, what happened after that? Didn't we all kind of, oh my God, the governments and also we were pretty passive, in relation to like how they treated our data and so on.
We didn't understand it in the beginning. I think.
No, we didn't.
I mean, it's certainly a problem that we have to tackle somehow. If it should be tackled with regulation or something else, who knows? But I think it's a bit scary. What do you think, Henrik?
Well, I think it's a tricky topic, and I think taking the news and journalist approach on this, I think it's quite interesting to see how we can counterbalance it by, in a way, not standing on the sidelines pointing fingers, but basically, what is New York Times doing? What is Swedish radio doing? Getting on the game and outcompete them in your own domain. I mean, like, wake up and do it better, right? I don't think you can I don't think we can sit on the sidelines and point fingers. I think that is weak. I think we need to get in on the game and do the right stuff. And if I'm really utopian in my feeling, I think in the end, the customers will choose. The customers will go with what we started this conversation with. It's a fucking nightmare to look through all this noise. I need to start finding my influencers I trust. And I think that's how you beat them at their own game.
I think that's an interesting point. And I'd like to ask a really interesting question to you now. And I think it's related to trust, because I do think that's one of the core
I think it's about trust.
Values that we
you
will
can
have
win.
in the future.
You can win this game.
So, Olle, journalism. What do you think about the future of journalism when we actually do have AI-first society where everyone has access to AI? They can quickly ask and double-check anything, and they can use AI to also generate articles. And you can have people that are not journalists. They are complete laymen, and they are writing on social media, on Twitter or on Instagram or whatnot, and they are potentially becoming big influencers. What are your thoughts about the future of journalism in a society like this?
Then I think, it's about that trust. I think trusted brands will be even more important.
Right.
Ekot, for example, our main news brand, even in younger age groups like 18 to 29, it has 80% trust, according to big surveys that we have done. Do they consume Ekot every day? No, of course. But through in the car or through TV series or whatever, or through their parents, they know about these kind of. If you're 18 years old, you know about the biggest news brands in Sweden.
But do you think teenagers get their news from?
No, they get it from any platform. But it's kind of, they don't only get it from one platform. A big difference between podcasts and maybe streamed music and news is that people want to have more sources for news. Normal news consumptions, they go to Aftonbladet, but they don't trust Aftonbladet and Expressen. And they go to other multiple news sources, or they go online for Facebook or whatever. They look a bit there, or listen to radio, or they go to breaking news on TV, whatever. People have a blended consumption of news media.
This is something that you have data on, right?
Yes, of course. We see that a lot for all different age groups. But I think, going back to your question, it's about trust, but it's also about prominence, that we will be visible on major platforms, and doing that not because we're public service, but because we have good content and you can rely on us.
But what about journalists that in 10 years ago they could write articles and they were receiving a lot of impact because they simply came from a big brand, but now they have to compete with influencers that have not come from big brands, and and they are writing, very quickly written tweets or whatnot.
Yeah.
And then perhaps journalists of today have to write these kind of very clickbaity kind of articles, because that's the only way, because they get measured basically on the number of views potentially.
Yeah.
Or what do you think?
It's a big discussion. I think that when I was at Svenska Dagbladet, and that was like 8 years ago, it was a page view driven business model.
Okay.
So we just had to try to generate as much page views as possible, because the incomes from the printed edition were going down so much. Now it's more subscription-based model, and that people are digital subscribers, and that the maturity for paying for digital services is, of course, going up a lot in civilized, but in the more affluent parts of the world, that people can pay for digital services. It's normal.
But this is really interesting, because now then the full circle is back to quality.
It's quality
and back to content, right? Because I'm not going to pay for garbage. I'm not going to pay for a link to someone else's article.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay for something that I value, which is probably then somewhat personalized to my interests. But we had that conversation when we started, right? Where do you find your news feeds? And I'm thinking, I've noticed this subscription model, more and more things that I want to consume is behind a paywall now. All of a sudden, it was really funny now when I was looking at the Sam Altman or OpenAI. There's some starting points of good articles. I only got 10 lines, and I noticed it very quickly. I think this is a trend.
The paywall is one annoying thing, but the other annoying thing is, as soon as you go to a news website, you get bombarded with ads back and forth, and it's pop up, and the user experience on especially a mobile phone is not good.
One thing, and I can say this now when I don't work in a newspaper, but normally in a digital landscape, either you have an ad model or a subscription model. Yes. But look at the old printed newspapers. It's both.
Yeah.
You pay maybe 7,000 Swedish crowns, 700 euros a year to get the printed edition of one of the national newspapers, and you get a lot of ads, for wine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, how do people accept that in this economy? That's an interesting thing. But can I go back also, Anders, to your original question? One thing, then, it's about to keep the trust, you have to have reach.
Yes.
Because if we ask people, do you trust this media outlet? It has to do with brand awareness. You can't trust a brand that you don't know or that you don't use. So if SVT and SR are always highest up on the confidence and the trust scales, it's because everybody in Sweden knows about it. Yes. SVT is always top of the list because everybody knows about it.
But you pointed me, Alexander Bard, in a long time ago, like maybe 5-10, maybe 5, before COVID for sure. He was in a podcast, or I don't know but he was describing in quite some detail how he thinks the whole influencer setup of social media is actually killing itself. And he started about the only real KPI that is kind of worthwhile going for, where both the big brands get it wrong and some of the influencers are getting wrong, is that you have two fundamental dimensions in reach and relevance, I think was his words. So he talked about this, and we can now spin it back to journalism, we can spin it back to what you said. You need to have the relevance and the trust and the credibility and the depth of what you're doing, and you need to have the reach. So the big brands that sort of do, like Adidas doing huge marketing campaigns for their product, but it has no value, it has no relevance, has nothing that captures you. You get spikes and nothing. Yeah. And then the ones who have a lot of reach but no real relevance die again. So this reach relevance.
I think it's very, and I mean, with news content, for example, I when I talk about the content and I mean, then of course we have to make more relevant and engaging, and and important content, better investigations, for example.
Yeah.
But lastly, a big challenge for us, of course, is even if we're not super professional into building digital products, we have to build digital products.
Yeah.
And we want them.
Now we have AI to help you with that.
And our platform. Yeah, we dabble, as I say.
Why is this so important?
No,
Go
but
to the point.
Yeah, the point is that we have to allocate the resources to do that.
Yeah.
And I work a lot with EBU projects, our broadcasting union, that has also Eurovision.
Yep.
And we have 45,000 journalists working for us in Europe, a combined news budget of 7 billion euros a year. So if we pool resources,
nice.
we're almost like not a tech giant, but we're the biggest broadcasting union in the world.
But 7 billion will get you to a fairly decent platform compared to if every 45,000 has their own budget.
Unfortunately, we have to fund
Eurovision.
Eurovision and some broadcast features like content exchange of TV images. But anyway, we're now allocating more resources into the digital side of the EBU
because this is where you can collaborate on core infrastructure, and then you can take the core infrastructure and you can brand it on top for the different things.
So we have a news platform now with 2.1 million articles from 30 providers around Europe. So it's a big asset where we have AI translation, we have automatic tagging, automatic summaries. We have Peach, which is our recommendation engine that we have built together. So it's tech that we own, independent to providers and tech.
It's basically an Amazon, but for
this is a platform strategy.
Yeah,
this is a distributed platform strategy because
awesome. The time is flying away here,
yes,
and I'm trying to find. We have an ending, more philosophical question, but I love to hear at least one more question and your thoughts about that. And
yes, please.
We have a very interesting year coming up in US as well with an election, and I'm very sure that we will see a lot of AI influence on that one. What are your thoughts about the upcoming election in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, it's that we have to, prepare ourselves with knowledge around, for example, AI fakes or influence campaigns.
I guess you do expect to see a lot of generative AI being used.
So we're doing now, as I said before, about like digital forensics, for example. We're sending out this week a kind of checklist for AI generated content and how you can spot that. We do collaborations. Of course, we can then cover the election in our normal way in podcasts and with correspondents and reporters on the ground, send over teams, and so on. So we're doing a lot of stuff which is traditional journalism, basically, which is built on knowledge. And then I think if you go to the elections per se, it's always that you say, man, this time it's so, baffling. But of course, it is a very special situation if you have a former president who's also charged in 3 different court cases. You have the other guy who is what is he, 81 years old now? And he's stumbling on his words it's
this is soap opera.
If they were to make a movie like this, and it was actually completely
it's not believable.
Fiction,
it's not.
No one would believe it. Exactly. But this is actually happening for real.
Do you guys who know these tech profiles better than I do you think that in then 2028 we could have Elon or he's not born in the States? I don't think you have Sam
Jeff
Altman
Bezos for president, right?
Sam Altman going for the presidency?
I don't think so.
I know.
I do think that you have more
Elon
power.
will not allow it.
I do think though that tech companies will potentially have more power than the country. That's another question. And we already know that the revenue for some like Google, I think, is more than the combined BNP of Switzerland, Italy, and Holland combined together. Of course they have more power than most countries already, and And I think that is where they will stay, but we'll see. Who knows?
That's why they called them to the UK summit and not Sweden.
Yes, potentially.
They had more money.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's already 7:00. Should we move to the final question?
Take one more of the philosophical ones, but then I think we said 1.5,
Yes,
and we were saying
it's good
if we have fun, it will be
round up.
2.
I have to go home and make dinner.
Okay, Olle. We hear a lot in media and in perhaps Swedish radio as well a bit about the future of AI, and usually hear a lot of dystopian kind of futures. So if we believe that AGI will happen, and if the Q-star algorithm at OpenAI and others are successful and true, it may come a time at a number of years ahead where we actually have something that is more general and more intelligent and more knowledgeable than any and all humans combined together. If that happens, we can take like 2 extreme scenarios happening from that. One is the more dystopian kind of scenario where we have the Terminators, the Matrix, where machines are trying to kill all humanity, and it's not going to go well. Or we can take the other extreme of a utopian future where we live in abundance. We don't have any need to work unless we want to. We have all the energy, food, roof on top of our head. We have energy for free. We have no need for money potentially, and we can basically live our lives in abundance in some way, in harmony with AI. And it could be the other extreme, like really a utopian kind of future. Which one do you believe we will end up in? And do you believe that we will have an AGI in a number of years ahead?
I don't believe in any of those futures. I believe in calming down a little bit and to be critical also of the visions and the utopian, what you call it, like utopian visions or whatever, like fantasies. And I don't believe in the really dystopic doomsday scenarios either. I believe that we're all, at the end of the day, humans, and even if we have a kind of general intelligence, I think that as long as we have humans, we're going to be driven by human needs and human emotions. I'm not saying that, hey, humans can do much better than AI and there's something mystical about humans. I mean, maybe we're just kind of vessels for our intelligence, and I mean, we're a product of all these kind of different chemical processes in our bodies, and we are small language models ourselves.
We're machines ourselves.
Yeah, walking around, But I think that this utopian view, I mean, people would still fight over resources or fight over the best men or the best women, Yes. We are
humans.
We're humans, and we are competing with each other. And the dystopian view is that I think that is more unlikely also because we are, as a human species, we are resilient. And if something tries to eradicate us, maybe that's going to form a kind of human alliance of standing up, like you see in a little bit like those movies, And I think that we're going to try to have better control of what we do. So and the last question, if we're going to have this general intelligence, I haven't got a clue, and I leave that to you guys who know more.
I don't think we have a clue either, or I don't think anyone has.
It's fun to speculate, but it's.
What do you think?
I think, as you, it's somewhere in the middle, and people still have a strive to have better than someone else. You want to be better than your neighbor, and you still want to have the best female or the best man, and you want to have luxury. You want to live a bit better than the rest, and we have this kind of human
nature,
traits, and that will continue to happen. I still believe like a Star Trek kind of utopian future could happen, but it will take a really long time.
What about the AGI question? Have you changed there?
No.
What's your number?
29, Ray Kurzweil.
You go with Ray Kurzweil's analysis.
Yes. What about you, Henrik?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, like I think I've had somewhere a picture of 50 to 100 years in my head.
Really?
Yeah, for a long time. And then, but I'm more and more intrigued by the accelerating returns idea of Ray Kurzweil, that we are not very good at understanding exponential or accelerating innovation.
Yeah.
So we have an innovation speed that is accelerating. So that is 2 times.
Yeah.
It's exponential and exponential. That's
the only thing I want to add is that audio is well positioned in every scenario here, because audio is very close to kind of the body. If you can just talk out loud to any AI model and you get like a voice in your head, but through spectacles or through some kind of magical little fairy that sits on your shoulder, or you get advice from your AI assistant or whatever. I think audio is a very good way of getting.
But this is I think this is more useful instead of talking and going into the debate of AGI or not. What I can say is that my understanding for how we will live in 2029 has drastically changed. I think the whole human-computer interface is about to drastically change.
Yeah.
And I think from that, so it's a huge paradigm shift, and we will not understand the world as we know it. Computer systems, the way we interact with them, is just dumb. If you think about what we can do now.
Like heavy laptops.
And a CRM system for a sales guy out on the road, why? Why don't you just talk to the guy, as I have
why don't you have a Neuralink chip in your brain instead?
Yeah, that will come. All right. So all those stuff, I don't think is the same as AGI, but it will fundamentally make our world something completely different. Is it AGI? I don't care. So in 2029, I think our world, due to that, okay, now, if I follow the technology, we end up there fast. But what I've been saying on stage in my keynotes the last couple of years is like AI or the innovation speed now has nothing to do with technology. It's our ability to adopt things. It's our ability as humans that we are stuck in old organizational dogma. So AI is an organizational problem. It's not the technology problem to be solved. It's regulatory, it's organization, we as people are now doing this. And so then probably it's the catch-up effect. It's like technology is there and then it's going to creep up on us and then all of a sudden it's going to be something completely different. And then that is probably a little bit more than 10 years. I think it's a generation shift. I think it's, we need to sort of leave and let's see where our kids take this.
Olle, do you have a positive view of the future? Do you think AI will be more positive than negative to our society?
For the first time in a long time, I've said to myself and to friends that I really want to live to 100 because I want to see where this shit is going.
Good call.
Well said. It's certainly an exciting time that we're living in. Olle Zachrison, it's been a true pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for coming to the AI
Thank you so much.
podcast.
Thank you.